Welcome to Hello Baltimore County. I'm your host, Ellen Kobler. We have already had our share of bad storms in the Baltimore region this year, and the Atlantic hurricane season runs through November 1st. Here to offer us some real-world advice on preparing to keep your family safe is Baltimore County Fire Division Chief Jay Ringgold, who heads up emergency management and homeland security for the county. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit in Baltimore County, of all of the possible emergencies, what are some of the most likely scenarios that you tend to see?
Well, this time of year, most likely scenarios are going to be thunderstorms and coastal flooding. Of course, we're susceptible to everything in this area with the exception of a volcano.
Yeah, we're pretty good on that end, yeah.
But there are our biggest concerns are, thunderstorms and coastal flooding. But we've had derechos, we've even had earthquakes and all. So.
Yep, and the Catonsville flooding back on Memorial Day, that was thunderstorms. It wasn't some big, huge predicted storm. It was just thunderstorms, and the flooding was immense.
That was unusual because, as we refer to it as a no-notice event, we knew we were going to get thunderstorms, but not to that level.
Yeah. So when we get storms like that, we can get flooding. What do you advise people to do in case if some of these people were in areas that didn't flood before, so they don't even think of themselves as needing to prepare for flooding?
Yeah, it was really a historical event. I mean, we've got over 10 inches of rain in a 6-hour period, and no drainage system is going to be able to handle that amount of rain. So that was an unusual event, and the things you want to do is really pay attention to information that's coming out in the media. Also look at, in your neighborhood what's going on, and whether you have to make the decision or you're going to evacuate or you're going to stay.
Yep, and you put information regularly up on Twitter at Baco Emergency, and
yes.
You encourage people to follow that?
Absolutely. We try to put out updated information during the events on the Baco Emergency, information about, closed roads, flooded areas, those types of things that we may need during that time.
What about insurance for flooding?
It's important insurance because most people didn't have flood insurance, especially in an area that's not designated as a flood-prone area, which is unusual, well, unique, because some people had sewer and backup insurance, and because of the flood, many insurance companies did not cover that. So those people that didn't have that, even though their sewer backed up, they weren't covered because of the flood that caused the event.
So that's a separate rider you can get on your insurance, a sewer backup.
Absolutely. Sewer backup, we recommend everyone have sewer backup and even flood insurance. And depending on the area that you live in, is going to be what the cost for flood insurance. It could range from $400 to $4,000 if you're in more of a flood-prone area.
Okay, and you mentioned thunderstorms, lightning. Lightning is actually very common and more dangerous than people know, I think.
Absolutely. Many people a year get struck by lightning. Plus, it also starts a lot of fires, house fires, forest fires, wood fires, those things. And lightning is unpredictable. I mean, there are 3 different types of lightning. We're more familiar with the cloud-to-ground lightning strike, but there's also cloud-to-cloud and cloud-to-air strikes that never hit the ground. But the ones that we're mostly concerned are the cloud-to-ground lightning strikes.
So what should people do if you're out, with family and friends, picnicking?
You want to be in a protected area, something that's enclosed. You don't want to be in the front porch or anything like that because that's still an open area. You don't want to be standing next to tall trees because they're likely to get struck. Be in an enclosed room. Being in a car, most people thought the rubber tires were protecting you in the car, but actually it's the steel frame around the car that actually protects you in a lightning strike. So make sure you have your windows up and you're, not touching any metal in that car.
Windows up, which you probably would if it's raining anyway, but you might not think of it with the static electricity. Okay, and in general, for big storms or other types of emergencies, what do you recommend that people do to plan ahead?
One is you want to have a disaster kit. In your kit, you want your basic supplies. You want food and water. We usually say be self-sustained for 3 days, but really you should be prepared for almost 7 days.
Wow.
And not only things in your kit you want to take in consideration is you want to have medication that lasts you for at least 7 days. You want to have things for your pets that will last for 7 days. You want to have battery-operated radios and flashlights for those events. Those things you want to consider because during a power outage, Many people use candles, but that's a fire threat and a hazard, and especially if you have small kids around, that creates additional hazard. So some of the basic things, a manual can opener, because most people
Yeah,
use
you don't think
those
about
things you
that.
don't think about.
Right.
All those things you want to have, basic things that non-perishable items that you can have that will last you for a duration of time. These things you want to have in your kit.
And we all carry these cell phones that are miraculous mini computers, but they're no good when the battery's dead. So you want to have a way to recharge if the power's out for an extended period.
Exactly, a backup battery pack for your cell phone is another thing, and cash, because a lot of ATMs will be out of service and on large power outages, and you may need cash.
Yeah, indeed. So you've got the supplies covered, and by the way, people can go to our county website and get more information about that. What about the plan? Things happen suddenly. The family's not necessarily all together in one place. How do you plan to reconnect if roads are closed and there's severe damage?
And part of your plan should be a communication plan in there.
Yeah.
And some of the things that we found out in some large storms that you cannot make local calls, but sometimes you can make long distance calls.
Really?
So having an out-of-state contact where everybody could report to, and that person could be a central point of communication is something you also want to consider in your plan. Communication is a big aspect because we rely on our cell phones and our internet and all that. And large-scale disasters, most of the time, they're going to be inoperable. So you're going to need to have some type of backup plan.
So the phones will be overwhelmed. I remember an earthquake a few years ago, and it was quite minor in scale, at least in this area. But you couldn't make a phone call. But it seemed to me the text messages went through. Is that how that goes?
It's less data using text messages. So these things. Another thing is a old style landline phone. Most of our phones are wireless phones, or that when the power goes out, the base unit goes out, and you cannot communicate. The old phone that just plugs into the wall, that does it's not cordless phone, a non-cordless phone, something like that, because often the phone lines will have their own power, and you can still make a phone call with an old style phone.
Okay, and if something big is to happen, when and how do you decide to activate the Emergency Operations Center, and how does the structure work, and what should people know about that?
And that's a good question. We usually look at the magnitude and the duration of the incident. Because many incidents most of the time are relatively quick. They're over within 4 to 6 hours. But if it's an extended period of time, and when we say an operational period, we usually say anywhere from 8 to 12 hours is an operational period. So if we know if this event is going to extend multiple operational periods, we're going to open up the Emergency Operations Center. And then also what recovery aspects are going to be in consideration. If it's going to be a long-term recovery, we're going to open up the Emergency Operations Center so we can start planning for not only mitigation of that incident, but the recovery aspects of it.
And who is in that center, and what sorts of things are they doing to help the public?
We have many of the county agencies are going to be in the center, along with private and non-private stakeholders that may also be there. Our Public Works Division, our Fire Department, our Police Department, our Department of Health and Human Services, our Department of Aging, even Department of Rec and Parks. Those agencies could play a major role in not only response to the thing, but recovery aspects. And then we're going to bring in private stakeholders. BG&E may be in there, Salvation Army, Red Cross, health hospitals. These things also could be a part of the emergency.
Okay, and we'll mention again the Twitter at Baco Emergency, because that's a good way for people to get direct information from you and your colleagues as to what they should know and what they should do.
Absolutely. We try to post regularly on Twitter, whether local events or smaller events and large-scale events, and giving you information where shelters may be open, road closures, boards that we're going to direct you to, all these things that we're going to put out on Twitter. That way you can be prepared during that disaster.
And we should note that if somebody isn't a person who's really using Twitter, they can still go to it as a website and see the information.
Yes.
And your information is also on the county website, the county Facebook, and the other social media platforms. Sometimes you'll tell people to evacuate or shelter in place. How do you make those determinations?
And that's a big thing. When it comes down to emergency plan, it comes down to two things. Do I stay or do I go?
Right.
And if I stay, what resources do I need to be self-sufficient and sustain myself for a duration of this event? If I go, where do I go to? A A lot of times we may open up shelters. The shelters are going to probably be relatively full, whether it's small, local or state shelters. But most people say, well, I'll just go to a hotel room. Well, many other people are thinking the same thing.
Right.
So you may have to go farther away or have relatives that you can go to, these types of things. A relative and a long distance relative is a great
Okay,
plan.
well, that's a good tip. All right, so it sounds to me like you're saying be prepared, stay aware, and keep informed through Baco Emergency. Well, thank you very much for taking time to join us today.
Thank you.
Sure, and thank you for watching Hello Baltimore County. Don't forget, you can find out more about preparing for emergencies on the county website and by connecting with Baltimore County government on all of our social media platforms.